Week 5 of LFM racing brought with it some very new opportunities for me, and I'm very excited to show you my very first crack at the LFM Pro series. You see, having gained a silver license in the prior week's races, I was now eligible for this race for the very first time. And to be perfectly honest, I was very nervous about my entry to this race. Nobody shows up to these events without being well prepared, and being a single event, no do-overs, you wanted to put your very best foot forward. But the other new thing about this week is I have some new colours on the car, and I'm happy to announce my new team in LFM, West Competition Racing. A very cool group who reached out to me to offer a place on their team despite me being well and truly the lowest ELO player on that team. I'll talk a bit more about the opportunity to join them at the end of the video, as you're going to want to see the race unfold. But I also want to shout out my friend on Discord, Luxka, who did the livery for me, and as you can see, it's an absolute stunner. Taking inspiration from the official WCR Academy colours and some beautiful little Kiwi touches for me, which are very visual now in the videos. So without further ado, you're going to want to see all the drama of this race, and let's dive in. Right, as always, we're going to jump into qualifying for this one, and we're in the lead up to what will be my fastest lap of this particular session. But before we jump into that, I'm going to talk a little bit about what sort of work I've done to this point. Now, Pro Series happens on a Thursday night, and having come back from a family holiday, I was basically solely focusing on this race for the first part of the week. I had dismissed the daily races completely to this point, and a lot of practice was put into the setup, trying to make sure the tyre pressures were on point, and mostly practicing in these exact conditions. Granted, 24 degrees instead of the 26 degrees we have for track temperature. So here we are, jumping into my fastest lap and hopefully putting together what I was doing in practice. You see, I'd done a 2 minute 18.3 for my first flying lap of the session, but immediately get a couple of tenths into the first corner, a tenth up on the way out, so already a small improvement there. Coming up towards Auru Radion, this was a corner that I was certainly struggling with earlier in the week and slowly starting to get a bit more confident in it. You had to be full throttle through there to have any opportunity at a good lap, even with full fuel in the race, and the Ferrari is definitely quite nervous up there, so it was certainly a tricky corner for me. Get down the end of the Kemmel Straight into Le Com. This section I was getting rather nicely and a lot more confident, particularly coming out of Le Com here, using a bit more of the curbs, and then hard on the brakes down into Brussels, down to first gear, get the car rotated and out the other side. 4 tenths up now on that first flying lap. No name now, this was a corner that I was really struggling with a few weeks ago during week 1 of LFM, but getting a lot more happy getting the car through there and down into Pujon. This is again a tricky corner. The rear of the Ferrari wants to go away from you here, and again just a corner I'm getting more and more comfortable with, particularly during the practice during the week. Going through Campus now, third gear in qualifying, second gear in the race, the first part of that corner, third gear out the other side here, and down into Stelvot. Again, I'm sort of showing 3 tenths up, 4 tenths as we come out of Stelvot. So overall this lap is going pretty well. Making our way onto the back half of the circuit as we head our way up towards Blanchemont. And the lap is always make or break in this final chicane complex, so I was hoping to really nail that final braking zone and get some good pace. You see, a 2 minute 16.9 pole position lap. I was not going to get anywhere near that in this session for sure. Into the final chicane now, good on the brakes, 6 tenths up. We keep half a second up as we come out the other side. This is a really good gain through these final corners, and we're going to come across the line for a 2 minute 17.9, which at the time pushes me up to 5th position, and I'm certainly in the mix here in this split 4 race. Now I gave it a good shot to try and improve it through the remainder of the session, setting a couple of low minute
setting a couple of low 2 minute 18 second lap times, but unfortunately not able to reproduce that lap or improve on it at all. You see I go a little bit long as we come out of Le Combe, throwing away the opportunity of that final lap in the session and ultimately finishing up P9 in that quali session. Into the race now, and I was certainly in the middle of what would be quite a tight group at the back end of the top 10 and just outside of that. A lot of the cars around me had been setting very similar qualifying times to me, and I knew that Sector 1 was going to be the weak part of this track for the Ferrari, so I was ready to get my elbows out in a way. We're coming down to the start line now, green, 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 and off down to El Rouge for the first time. On the inside, just going to stay nice and careful, a 60-minute race, just want to get through this first lap and see where we're at off the end of it. Down onto the Kemmel straight for the first time. This Porsche beside me has got a slightly better run, so I'm able to sort of pull in behind, but a McLaren coming up as well, so I'm going to half defend this, not as a means of trying to overtake the Porsche in front, but just to keep myself safe, making the apex here into Le Combe, and thankfully getting through here not too bad. The Bentley, he's come off track, he comes in back behind me, and I was a little bit nervous when I saw the red bar for a high ping for this particular car. I was a bit worried about driving close to him. I outbrake myself into Brussels and almost get into the back of the Porsche in front. Thankfully no contact, but that does put the Bentley on the outside into no name. We go side by side. I want to defend this one. I don't quite give enough space on corner exit, so he has to give me a bit of bump to get back on the track. Another one in the middle of the track there. And as we come down into Pouhon, I get a little bit long on the brakes and I get a touch from behind with the Bentley, and that spins me out onto the outfield. Let the whole field come by me, and unfortunately to the back of the pack. You see on the replay there, almost into the back of the Porsche, just opens up the door for the Bentley to come in there, completely my fault. We go side by side through no name, as I said, and as you can see, not enough space on the exit, so he's entitled to give me a little nudge for some space there. And I just go a bit long, and I think potentially his ping issues, a little bit of rubber banding in game, and he's just given me the slightest of touch when the Ferrari is loose in the rear in that corner, and that's easily put me into a spin. Super unfortunate way to start my race, and it's just one of those things that happens. I have to now reset my mindset into a recovery drive from this point on, but I have a full 60 minutes and a quick car to see what I can do getting back towards the pack. And as you can see here, letting the whole field by, forgetting that I now have manual engine start, finally get the thing going, and we're a full 10 seconds behind the next place driver in the field. A bit of a disastrous start, but we're going to push on, and thankfully the race comes back to us relatively quickly. And coming into Blanchimont at the end of this first lap, already there's been some tangles with some cars, the Porsche off onto the outside of the circuit there, and in fact the Bentley looks like he's been involved with that one as well. We go long into the final chicane. It'd be really good not to have two moments with this Bentley on the first lap. And this is in fact the last we do see of this Bentley in this race. I think those ping issues catch up with him a little bit, and he ends up retiring from the race. We push on a few laps now. This is lap number 3, and as you can see, a full train of cars in front of me. The shuffling effect of the first few laps has brought them all back to me, and we're instantly back in the battle, trying to get this recovery drive underway. Coming out of campus, this BMW in front, he's on a bit of a recovery as well. We get down to Stelvot, and certainly making some time up, my first proper flying lap in the race, and looking to get into the 2 minute 18s pretty early on in this one. Coming up to Blanchimont for the third time, and we're just hoping to get a bit of a gain through this final chicane to really put us into the back of this battle pack. The chicane was one of the stronger parts of the track for me, really working on the braking zone for this one, and immediately you can see making some good gains on the field. A bit of a passing opportunity in front for those cars, and there's a bit of nose to tail coming out of the chicane here. We take a quick avoidance action and get by 3 of those cars straight away. Could have easily been involved in that one, so fortunately some quick reflexes got me around there. BMW is on the outside of me as we come into La Source. He tries a bit of a switch back here, and like I said at the start of the race, the Ferrari is not strong through this first sector down the Kemmel Straight, so I'm trying to get through El Rouge as best as I can here, and again, getting the elbows out. I don't want to give away this position. I have been catching this car in the last few laps, so I know if I can hold on to this one, I will get a chance to drive away. He's making a little bit of a gain on me. He's kind of thinking, having a look, and putting it more in the middle of the road, just to be sure to him that I'm definitely going to defend this. Brake early, make the apex, and straight away we get into the stronger part of the track for the Ferrari, and a few corners later I managed to pull away enough of a gap to take the pressure away from me. Going on a couple of laps here, and I've managed to drive up to the back of this number 23 McLaren. We have a little bit of a look down into the final chicane with a little bit of a run. I don't want to tangle up, so I'm not super aggressive, and it kind of comes to nothing. The BMW, he gets then a look on the inside out of the last chicane, and again that kind of eventuates to nothing as well. It's a little bit of a clumsy move, but it's a little bit of a push along from me, trying to see where things might happen. We go on to the start of lap number 7. There's an Aston Martin that spun. He's just out of shot. He comes back in there. The ACC drive, the yellow flag indicator shows that one nicely. So we go around the outside of him, nice and easy to avoid it, and we push on down towards El Rouge once more. This McLaren, he got a nice run on the Ferrari in front, so I've got a new target in front of me to chase for the rest of this first stint. And at the end of that lap, we very quickly find ourselves coming up to the back of that Ferrari. Again into the chicane, nice and strong under brakes, making up a bit of time there. Ferrari goes a little bit long, so immediately I've got an opportunity to put some pressure on and try and claim this P25 position. Coming down to La Source on the start of lap number 8, I show the nose a little bit. He moves over to defend it, which is exactly what I was after. Allows me to have a nice normal entry through turn 1. Not the best exit, but certainly going to have a good shot up El Rouge and hopefully get a run on him down the Kemmel Straight. We're both in the Ferrari, so he's not got any advantage on me in that regard. Get through El Rouge pretty well here, and I do get that run started, slowly creeping my way up to the back of this car. And as we get up towards the braking zone, I move it over to show the intention. He doesn't try and cover it all, so I get to take the braking marker there, hit the apex. He's still on my outside there. We managed to have enough car in front, squeeze him on the inside apex a little bit, and get through that one, claiming that P25 position. Coming back up to the door card, number 23 McLaren, we come into campus here on lap number 9. And as he comes out of campus, he gets a little bit of a wiggle, and over the curb he loses the rear end and fires off into the barrier there. So we managed to inherit P24 from him. And with 36 minutes left of the race to go, nearing the pit stop, we do catch up here to a couple of Ferraris in front and a Porsche in front of them, positions 21, 22 and 23. And it's starting to look like this is maybe where the pit strategy can be a bit of an advantage for me. You see on the track map there that I'm going to be a little bit close if I pitted right now to the leaders of the race. So I was a bit wary of when I wanted to make the stop. But you can see I'm definitely faster than a few of these cars in front of me. But the idea of potentially running a undercut scenario to get some clear air and push my way past these guys was certainly playing on my mind. With 34 minutes of the race left to go, at the end of lap 11, I can see there's a little gap I could come into. I decide I will do the opposite of what these cars in front of me are going to do. They stay out, so I decide to pit. We fire it into the lane, all the way up to the 50k/h sign, get it slowed down. Don't go over the speed limit on that one, which is great. I'm going to make a couple of small adjustments to the tyre pressures and also take away the fixing of the damage as well. I can't afford to lose those 2 seconds, but I don't necessarily need to fix that damage either. Coming into the stop here, do I get it right? No, I'm a little bit short once more. I promise I will get this right at some point in the future, and then 30 seconds for the stop to be completed. And just as I predicted, as we come out of the pit lane, I find myself in a nice little gap. We have door card number 1 Ferrari in front of us. It looks like the leaders have indeed made a stop while I was in the pits. So a nice bit of fresh air, 5 seconds to the car in front and 15 seconds back to the leader of the race. Nice clean air for me for probably the first time in this race to just put down a good outlap and a few good fast laps to see if we can't leapfrog those 4 cars that were sitting in front of us. We come through to set the fastest lap of the race to that point, a 2 minute 18.7, and immediately we get a yield from this strategy. We come up El Rouge. I do take a track cut, unfortunately, but door card number 13, the Porsche there, he was at the very front of that 4-car train when I came in, and we sail by him at the end of the Kemmel Straight to take what at the moment is P24, but it's certainly showing me that I'm in the mix to claim a good 4 spots through this pit stop sequence. Coming up El Rouge once more on lap number 15, and once again we have the same scenario here. Door card number 32 Ferrari, he was 2 cars in front of us before the stops, so we managed to get by him as well, nice and easy down the Kemmel Straight, so lots of space on him. And so the strategy is certainly working out. I'm sitting now in position 20, making those 4 positions up through the stop sequence. Now with 18 minutes to go, I'm starting to work my way up to the back end of the top 20. There's a number of cars in front of us here, and this is where the rest of my race battle was hoping to be held, trying to move my way up maybe into the middle of the teens and make my way a bit closer to that P9 starting position that I had. It was nice to see cars in front, and with a nice gap to the cars behind, there was no pressure behind. There was a little bit more pace in my car versus the cars in front. I just had to keep it clean, keep it consistent, and see what might unfold in the last 18 minutes of this race. I was quite proud of this section of the race. Since the stop, I was able to put together some pretty good race pace times, everywhere from sort of mid-18s to 19 flats, and it was consistent. I was pretty comfortable running at that pace, and it was just yielding a little result on the cars in front of me each lap. Making our way down to Brussels once more. Again, we actually find ourselves within a second now of this white McLaren in front of us. Coming through No Name here, I was getting a lot more comfortable with this corner, running nice and wide onto the exit apron there. But as we come down to Buhon on lap number 18, unfortunately that rear end gets away from me a tiny bit too much. I'm unable to catch it, and I go round to that corner for the second time in this race. My rejoin is not great, and apologies to that lapped Porsche for having to avoid that one. But I lose about 10 seconds of race time. I lose that P20 position to the black Ferrari who was behind me. And it was a bit of a disappointing way when really there were positions in front to be gained to give it away like that with just over 15 minutes left to go in the race. Now unfortunately, when I do make mistakes like that, it does fluster me a little bit. When I'm in a groove, everything's going really well, but when a mistake like that happens, it takes me a couple of laps to settle back down and get into that groove once more. Now with 6 minutes and 40 seconds of the race still to go, I do in fact set here my fastest race lap of this particular race. It's right on par with the best race lap I've set at Spa during LFM races, and considering that I'm 12 laps into the stint and 54 minutes into this race, I was quite proud to actually come away with my fastest race lap at this end of the race. I think for me this shows just how much can be gained when you focus on one sole race like you do when you do Pro Series. This was really the concluding moment for me to show how important doing races like this is, rather than doing daily races when you always have another opportunity to get it right in another race in another hour's time. Having just one race and putting more focus on it has certainly yielded some really good gains for me at Spa this week. It's certainly something I'm going to push into more of, and particularly with the alignment now with West Competition Racing, I think this will be a big part of my channel moving forward, because I wouldn't really be making gains like this at a track if it weren't for such focused practice. Now the unfortunate thing is when you have issues like I did at the start of the race, it can kind of undo the race time a little bit and can undo all of that work in a way. But this lap here particularly was certainly what cemented why this is a positive experience. And as you see, we come through Blanchimont for this time. I'm a tiny bit up on that best lap time so far, but as we come into the final corner, really good under brakes there, releasing it at the right moment, and I make a huge gain out of that final turn, and we're going to come away here a 2 minute 18.407 on those used tyres with 13 litres of fuel still in the car. Very happy with that lap. Only a few laps left to go in this one, and as you can see, we're getting nice and close here to that P20. And in fact, I do inherit a P20 position because the number 8 Ferrari, he's been turned around, we've had a spin, so we gain a position there, back to P20, but that black Ferrari is still the target. But unfortunately, it is about to all be undone. We go long into turn number 1 here. This is the second to last lap of the race. And as we come down to El Rouge for that second to last time, unfortunately things go very wrong for me. At the very last part, at the transition at the top of the hill here, I get a little bit too much slide in the rear and it completely fires me off to the right and into the barrier across the pit exit there. It is a big hit. It has severely damaged the car. Undrivable at this point, and with 1 minute and 37 seconds left of the 60-minute race, I have completely thrown away any chance of any result, period. It's pretty disastrous, and you see on the replay here, it happens very fast. Now the car was threatening to do this to me basically every time I went up the hill here. I was very nervous. You're running the Ferrari on low wing for some straight line speed, definitely makes it tricky up El Rouge, and I just get a little bit too much slide at the very top of the corner, potentially some fatigue from me, end of the race, and this is the longest stint I've ever driven. There's a lot of firsts at this point, and it just goes wrong, and when it goes wrong, it goes really wrong here at Spa. So we'll show it again. That lovely livery is now totally destroyed for this particular race, and it's a truly catastrophic way, completely disastrous, soul-destroying finish to this particular race. It feels in this moment like a whole week's work has been thrown away in one moment, and it was certainly a hard pill to swallow for me. I didn't even start making this video for a couple of days just to unwind from a moment like this, but it proved the motivation. It proved what sort of result I was trying to produce from this race and how motivated I am to try and be competitive in these competitive fields. Even at Split 4, Pro Series requires your best. It requires your best driving, no mistakes to produce any kind of result. And unfortunately, in this one, it has not worked out for me, and it's good to show all of the journey here on LFM, not just the good stuff. It has been going well the last few weeks, but this was one of those moments where it definitely did not. Now, because of where the pit lane is versus the finish line, despite the race having been finished and all these cars here, the leaders and winners of the race, being in pit lane, I was in fact able to get out on track and complete that final lap out of that damage. And that at least meant that I could be classified for the race. It saved any large safety rating drop due to not finishing, and I claim a position 30 out of 32 cars, obviously laps down, and it was at least classified. That was the main thing, not having a DNF with that crash. So there it is, the end of my first Pro Series race on LFM.
Well guys, I can't always show you the best racing on LFM, and it's safe to say that there was a lot of disappointment from this race afterwards, but we need to focus on the positives from this one. Like I said in the video, doing Pro Series is actually a really amazing situation. Doing a single race with no do-overs means you really put in a significant amount of effort into trying to make those 60 minutes work for you. And from a driving perspective, I made a huge step forward at Spa. You see, I completed qualifying laps and race laps very similar to what I did 5 weeks ago on LFM in week 1, but I did it in track temperatures that were significantly higher than those races, between 8 and 10 degrees. Not only that, my race pace was more consistent and I was able to mix it up a little bit better with some of the drivers in the field. Yes, some unfortunate moments, and yes, that terrible accident at the end kind of undid the results, but from a learning perspective, there's nowhere else in LFM where you're going to get this level of racing to push you to this point. So it's safe to say that this will be a bit more of an ongoing type of race for me in LFM. And it sort of marks the next phase or the next part of my journey in my sim racing. To also talk a bit deeper about the opportunity to join West Competition Racing, it's really a perspective from the team that they want to provide a learning opportunity for me in an environment where I can start to mingle with drivers who are significantly higher ELO than me. The academy team itself has players up to 4,700 ELO, and seriously, these guys are super fast, but they're just as friendly and just as willing to help. I've already been given some great tips and advice, and the opportunity to race with these guys in teams races is coming straight away as well. I seriously can't thank them enough for the opportunity to join them, and I'm confident that I'll be able to find some more lap time with the help from these drivers. It's super exciting stuff, and I hope that I can then offer all of that learning back to you guys in future videos, and hopefully it means that I can partake in some of the more special events and special endurance races in the future as well. I certainly have some speed to find, and I really need to start getting my head around the BMW M4, as it's the official car that these guys use in their special events. So a lot to learn from me, but nice to have a bit of direction, and I hope that you guys are as excited as I am to see how it all unfolds. Thank you so much for watching my first Pro Series race. Please let me know in the comments how you think I did. It's certainly taken me a few days to get over it and to talk about this race, but we're moving on to some new daily races and trying to recover the 160 ELO that I lost during this race. As always, race hard, and like I'm trying to, stay positive, and we'll see you all again in another video soon. Cheers.